The Spin-off Podcast Network. You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by SparkLab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about SparkLab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
Kia ora koutou katoa, and welcome to Business is Boring. As people, we're pretty funny with stuff. Things like glass bottles that can be used thousands of times, we use once and recycle. And things like cast iron pans that worked for centuries and last for generations have largely been discarded for short lifespan Teflon pans. One company out to change this is Ironclad Pan Co, a cookware company made in New Zealand and Australia, offering a 100-year guarantee on their products. To talk how you do that, seasoning a pan, and what's next, co-founder and CEO of the Ironclad Pan Co, Joe Carter, joins us now. Tēnā koe, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having us on, Simon. Pleasure to be here.
Hey, so tell us about the birth of the idea. What got you interested in cookware?
Yeah, right. So I've been working in advertising and marketing and building brands for a little while. Had run my own agency, had worked for other agencies, had worked for publishers, but had never created a product. And so Levi Slavin, who was my old boss at Colenso BBDO, and his wife, they'd been looking in their cupboards in the kitchen where all great ideas start, and they just kind of discovered all of these Teflon pans and then a bunch of heirloom cast iron pans that they'd inherited from previous generations. And they decided that they wanted to make a cast iron skillet. And ultimately, whatever they created had to pass the 6-year-old test. So it had to be used by their 6-year-olds in their lifetime, and something that they'd, get behind and support in terms of the materials that we use and the actual product that we create. And so, in sort of back end of 2019, we went to China, of course, because that's what we know. And it was cheap, and it was cheerful, and you could tell it was cheap and cheerful. And part of our decision making when we were thinking about the product and the brand was we wanted to be able to put a guarantee on it, something that was signed by all three of us co-founders, myself, Levi, and Kate. And we just didn't feel comfortable doing that on a Chinese product. Never mind their carbon emissions and all the things that come from importing goods from overseas. And so we decided to make them in New Zealand.
And what was it about? So you're interested in products, and you were with a couple of really creative and interesting people who care about things in Kate and Levi. But what was it about? Why exactly cast iron pans? Is that a symbol for all the things that are wrong, or is this something that's a real kind of special bugbear?
So I think, as you mentioned in your intro, it's something that we discovered, pre-industrialism, that people have been using for centuries and had absolutely no challenges with. And then Teflon came along and just brainwashed into using, mass-produced, really cheap shit in our kitchen. And so, that happened. It just found its way into different cultures and different markets and stuff. And the cast iron cookware category just went into decline. And we kind of started thinking, well, we had it right once. Why would we try and reinvent the wheel? Why wouldn't we just try and bring something that once was popular, bring it back into popular culture and do what we're good at, which is the storytelling and the branding around selling a product and trying to change behavior. There's heaps of benefits to using cast iron cookware versus other cookware in terms of its heat retention, its durability. When we started talking to some chefs who have fortunately come on board and started using and selling our products, it turns out it's a chef's choice. So if the chefs are using it in the commercial kitchens in their hospitality venues, why wouldn't we advocate that you should use it at home again?
Yeah, so how does the cast iron work compared to a a Teflon no stick. And I mean, Teflon pans definitely kind of took the world over, didn't they? Even though until, quite disturbingly recently, they were letting off some pretty noxious chemicals into the system. And that's not the case. If people have got a Teflon pan at home that they've bought in the last kind of 10 years, you're probably safe with your Teflon pan. But prior to that, they actually were a health hazard, hey?
Yeah. So there's a really good documentary film called Dark Waters that was really good sort of reference material for us that explains what happens with a Teflon pan when you throw it into landfill and what happens when you cook with it. And in New Zealand, we still throw over 1 million Teflon pans into landfill every year. The chemicals from the pan leach into the soil. They end up in our waterways. They end up in our food. Ultimately, we ingest them. And when the surface of your Teflon pan starts to scratch and peel away, that's when the chemicals then leach directly into your food and directly into you. And yeah, I mean, the hazards of that are horrible. With cast iron, the opposite kind of happens. The more you use it, the better it gets. It's not going to end up in landfill. It might end up in an op shop in 100 years' time. It will end up having future generations use it. It retains the heat really well as a cooking element, and it works perfectly on all cooking surfaces. So I use mine on induction, but you can use it on gas. I've taken it on camping trips and used it on the campfire. It's just super, super versatile. So the benefits of cast iron over Teflon are both performance-based, but also kind of environmentally and health-based as well.
Yeah, and there was some kind of chemical or compound that was previously used in the production of Teflon that was just straight out disastrous. So if you've seen the documentary or read the absolutely amazing story about the town where all of the Teflon stuff was made, it's a disaster. It's not as bad as that now, but it's still not great with the waste. What's the big difference in terms of seasoning? Because I imagine, people may have in their head that cast iron pans are a little bit more high maintenance to set up and keep using. And so what's the process to kind of break one in, and then how do you maintain it?
Yeah, so there's two big challenges that we get from our customers or potential customers. One is the price. Why am I paying $280, when I'm used to paying $15 or $20 for a pan from Briscoe's? I think if you question why that pan is available for $20 at a 50% year-round discount in those big retailers, then you'll understand. And $280 is an investment. You're never, ever going to buy another pan. It's the last one that you get. In terms of the seasoning process, so that was a deliberate design choice when we were first making the pan. So we called dozens of foundries in New Zealand, and we landed on one in Avondale in Auckland who could actually make our products for us. The seasoning process, so we decided to keep them unseasoned. That's how they were traditionally sold way back in the day. Again, it's only through kind of mass production and machinery and stuff that's led to them being seasoned in the box from other companies. We wanted people to have the experience of seasoning it themselves at home, kind of like the IKEA effect, where you take your flat pack chair out of the box and you spend the next hour and a half trying to work out how to put it together. We give our customers some seasoning instructions. So essentially you wash the pan, you open up all of the pores and you heat it up for 10 minutes in the oven. You then take it out, coat it in oil, and we use grapeseed oil in ours because it's got a really high smoke point. And then you chuck it back in the oven for about an hour and then it's good to cook with. What that does is it builds up kind of this bronze patina on the base, which is a natural non-stick patina. And then after every use, we recommend that you just wash it, with no soap, no detergent, nothing like that, just some water, dry it thoroughly, and then apply some more oil or our conditioning balm that we've developed. And that's what builds up the non-stick surface on the base of it.
And, if you've ever worked in a restaurant, like you say, that's what all the chefs are up to at the end of the night. One of the last things is to lovingly oil all of the cast iron. In terms of kind of like that process, you mentioned the foundry, which is such a great word, eh? That foundry in Avondale. Tell us about how it's made and what it's made from.
So we had absolutely no idea going into it how traditional the processes are around making this thing. We thought, you could just kind of turn on and turn off production as and when you need. But we need sort of a couple of weeks to get up to speed. That's been our biggest challenge in terms of business growth in New Zealand, is because every single one is hand poured and hand finished rather than machine made. We're limited on how many we can make each week rather than how many we can sell each week. But yeah, essentially we spent a couple of months designing the product in 3D and then turning it into what's called a pattern. And this pattern has 2 pans on it, kind of 2 pan molds. And that's been used. We've made a couple of refinements since we first started, but that pattern has been used for the last nearly 3 years. And then they'll pack a sand mold with sand and essentially print a pan by pouring molten hot iron into it. Another important point with our company is that we're not using any virgin materials in the pans. We didn't want to take anything out of the ground, and so we make sure that the foundry uses recycled materials using the highest quality grade of iron. So those could be old car parts, could be agricultural parts, could be railway sleepers, all sorts of things. So we're actually kind of repurposing and reusing existing stuff that otherwise would just be sent to scrapyards and turning them into something useful in the kitchen. And so it goes through this process, out pops a pan, and then it needs to be finished. So there's a couple of guys in the foundry, and you should see these guys, they're just covered in black. Like they're lifers. A lot of them have been there, 20, 25 years. They absolutely love making all these iron things. And they'll bring their hand tools out and they'll hand finish every single one to make sure that it meets our quality requirements. And then there's a whole bunch of testing that goes on every batch as well to make sure that the material components are right. And then we have a reject rate as well. So at the foundry side, probably 20% of what we're making doesn't actually make it through to the final finishing process. That could be because of heat differences, a whole bunch of different reasons. And then we have our own internal Q&A as well, because at the end of the day, every base of the pan says they're guaranteed for 3 generations, and we want to stand true to that replacement guarantee.
Yeah, I want to get into that guarantee in a minute, but that approach, and how do they look when they come out of the process? As when I saw the unfinished and the unseasoned, unbroken in pans, they look very different than the pans you expect to see, hanging up over your oven.
Yeah. So when they come out of the initial process, they're a little bit jaggedy around the edges, but they're completely silver and raw. And then when they're finished, they're cleaned up, and we kind of hand finish the surface. So a lot of cast iron skillets have bumps on the cooking surface. We wanted to make sure that was super smooth, so that you've got a more enjoyable cooking experience. And yeah, we wanted them to stay in their raw form, their natural silver irony form. So, iron isn't black. That is whatever the companies put in them to ship them around the world and pre-season them. We didn't want any of that. So we just wanted to make sure it was super natural and you could do it at home yourself.
And it's so cool that that's kind of these ancient arts that, when you say hand finished, I kind of, you immediately jump to those images in the background of the Northman, or, some kind of movie when a sword's being forged for someone. But it's the same stuff still going, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And we recently partnered with Peter Gordon and his team at Homeland, because several of our customers couldn't get beyond that barrier of pre-seasoning it themselves. They didn't want to mess it up. And, several customers previously have messed it up, and things have started to stick, or it started to rust, or whatever might happen. And so they've sent it, again, do the things that don't scale. They've sent it back into us. And Kate, bless her, has got a double oven at home and starts pre-seasoning pans for customers herself. And so we decided to make that an offering just for a limited time. And we must have had 100 or 150 pans go through Homeland's kitchen with Peter Gordon pre-seasoning them for customers, which was, again, a nice story to tell, to have a professional chef pre-season your pan for you.
Awesome. And we'll be back in a moment with Joe Carter to hear about how they put together a 100-year guarantee, a 3-generation guarantee for their pans. Spark is proud to partner with the Sustainable Business Network and the Climate Action Toolbox. The free Climate Action Toolbox can provide you with simple step-by-step guides to measure and reduce your emissions. Help lead the way to a low-carbon future for New Zealand. Visit sparklab.co.nz/sustainability to find out more.
Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tamaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today.
Easter's in full bloom at Whole Foods Market with great deals on spiral cut bone-in ham and leg of lamb, both crowd pleasers. Round out your spread with quiche, deviled eggs, and delicious catering platters from prepared foods. Oh, and remember to pick up a Whole Foods Market bunny cake from the bakery. Strapped for time? They cater too, with delicious options available without the effort. Find hundreds of Easter deals and delights now at Whole Foods Market.
Cool, so tell us how you did that. So 100-year guarantee for the pans, which sounds like a nice kind of marketing thing. Hey, like, 100-year guarantee, but how do you actually legally create something that's going to last quite a lot longer than, the average, even very long-lived corporation?
With a lot of hard work. Levi and I were kind of, writing it and thinking about it and thinking, how do we actually make this a real thing rather than just a marketing ploy, as you say? You see it, 100-year replacement guarantee, and you're like, there's absolutely no way they can legally do it. But we're proud to say we did. We called a handful of lawyers and we made sure that it was legally binding. And it comes as a printed scroll in the box, and it's also on the website as well. And it's quite a read, in there. What do we not cover it for? If you drop it in a live volcano, then you can't claim on your guarantee. But if you know where a live volcano is, then please let us know, because we'll test it out. What happens if Google closed down, or what happens if we stop trading with money? All of it's covered in the guarantee. And Levi's just a genius in terms of all of the things he foresaw might happen.
And so what happens? So if it breaks or craps out due to a material defect, then they get one returned, or how does it get fixed?
Yeah, so we've had, I want to say, less than 20 out of the 10,000 plus that are in the world have come back to us. We have a really, really low return rate, really high customer return rate, really low product return rate. And so, all we do is we send out a new one from the foundry that's part of that week's pour, and we just have weekly pours so that we can track them back. We send it out with a return shipping label to the customer free of charge and just explain, this might have happened for this reason or that reason or whatever it might be, but we want to take their pan back to the foundry for testing. And then we take the pan back to the foundry for testing. We melt down the iron from the return pan and we put it back into a new pan. So again, nothing's wasted in that process.
And these things that you're kind of talking through, like working out, legal avenues in case Google stops trading or money ceases to exist, and taking things back and hand seasoning things for things that haven't worked. They do sound, like you just said before, things that don't scale. So how do you go about growing a business when you're doing a whole lot of stuff that doesn't scale? Like, does it all kind of add up, or will it add up one day? Yeah,
so we were quite buoyant that you could be both sustainable and profitable. I mean, sustainability in general was a myth, but as sustainable as possible and profitable. And I think big companies can do it. I think small companies can do it. And there's various ways of doing it. For us, it was really focusing on the customer experience of our core product. So the legacy 28 centimetre pan, the little legacy 20 centimetre pan, and soon the Dutch oven, so 4.5 litre Dutch oven that Kate's been working on for the last 18, 24 months. Everything else that we create, so all the kitchen and camp accessories around it, are all designed to sell the core. So whether it's oven mitts, whether it's aprons, whether it's a whole range of knives that we've released with shear edge woolen handles rather than plastic handles, and sharpening steels and all the things, all designed to sell more pans. For us, we were kind of fortunate with COVID and the lockdowns, because that's when our business took off. People started eating more at home, had a little bit more disposable income, and were prepared to invest in New Zealand-made businesses rather than things that are being flown from the other side of the world, like tomatoes, just so we can eat them in season, which still baffles me. But that's another conversation for another day, I think. And yeah, we were really supported right from the start from the chef community in New Zealand and, several influencers. So as I mentioned, Peter Gordon has kind of been with us right from the start, with Nadia Lim and Al Brown and Michael van der Elzen, and just kind of the who's who in New Zealand chefs have been using them and then selling them as well. So having that stamp of approval from the start has been great. And then I just think recommendation, really. I mean, recommendation as a marketer is the holy grail. There's mechanics built into the customer experience and the brand experience that are designed to increase recommendation. And we find on average that 30% of our customers come back and buy another pan, which you'd understand if you were selling Coke. But if you're selling a product that you only need to buy once, for people to come back and want to buy it as a wedding gift or a birthday gift or a Christmas gift or, give it to someone else because they've enjoyed their experience that much, is testament to the work that the team are doing. It's pretty awesome.
And how do you sell them? So you've got the online store, and then you were saying that chefs are selling them as well?
Yeah, so we predominantly sell through our .com website, which is our New Zealand website. And then we're in about 30 retail stores in New Zealand, in about 10 in Australia, although that's a part of the business I'm looking to grow. And then, as I say, some of the chefs sell them either at their cookery schools or at their restaurants as well.
And what are your plans for growth?
Depends who you ask in the business. It changes every day. So my job is kind of leading that strategic direction, that vision, and kind of bringing a whole bunch of creatives together and making sure we get things done. It really changes. I think we noticed that a whole bunch of customers were ordering from Australia, like in their hundreds. And instead of us exporting from New Zealand to Australia, which is the less environmentally friendly option, but what I was taught at business school to do, import and export and have 8 different countries producing 8 different parts for a product. We wanted to make everything on the ground in Australia for our Australian customers. So that's something that we started doing a couple of months ago. So we launched a .com.au website, again, called maybe 70 or 80 foundries in Australia. Found one in Silverwater in Sydney that had the tooling and the people to be able to do it. And probably about 1,000 pans into the Australian market for now. So that's going to be our growth market. It's through Australia, both direct to customer and through a whole bunch of retail partnerships, as well as corporate gifting, which seems to be quite popular in Australia. We'll continue to increase the product portfolio as well, in terms of the cast iron products that we offer, as well as the other kitchen and camp accessories. Kate, my co-founder, she's a graphic designer by trade and turned product designer, and she's kind of got the itch for creating new products. But at the heart of those new products is sustainability in terms of that durability piece, craft, making sure everything is handcrafted, and we're partnering with the best kind of local artisan producers that we can. And then family as well. Kate's got 2 young boys, 2 dogs, husband, everything is designed for the family to enjoy. So essentially launching in a new market, which is crazy because we had no idea that we'd overlooked the fact that we'd need to build the brand from scratch again in Australia, which has been a challenge. So we're just in that let's get as much attention as possible phase, building out some new products, and then we'll probably go and look at a 3rd and 4th market to go and locally produce in. The idea is that we'll locally produce in every market that we launch into, but that might change if we can offset our carbon emissions when it comes to exporting.
And have you been surprised by the pickup, or is it kind of tracking ahead or behind of where you'd want? Because at one level, $280 for a pan is a big investment, isn't it? But then if you're kind of, going through a $20 pan every couple of years, it pays back pretty quickly.
It's completely surpassed our expectations. We kind of saw it as a side hustle and that we'd carry on doing our full-time jobs. Kate and I have both stopped doing our full-time jobs to do this full-time. We've hired a head of marketing and operations full-time to help us out. it's going, and nobody really prepares you for it. You just kind of have to make it up as you go along. And I think we've had some amazing advisors and partners help us along the journey so far as well. For context, in the first 6 months, sort of from November 2019 to April 2020, when we first launched to friends and family, we might have sold 20 pans at a stretch. And then on one evening, we sold 130. And since then, 2020, we did X amount in revenue. And then 2021, we just over doubled. And then this year, we're looking to do in excess of 4 million in New Zealand and Australia. So it's going. We just need to make sure that we're profitable. Banks don't enjoy working with small businesses because we're quite a liability compared to the bigger corporates who are already established. But we've found that the love and support, especially for locally made small businesses rather than just New Zealand designed or Australian designed small businesses, has been amazing. So we're just excited to see where it goes.
And that kind of, like you say with the banks there, 280 is pays itself pretty quickly down over the 100-year lifespan. What do the banks say when they see that you've got these kind of essentially liabilities printed on the back of each pan that people can bring them back for 100 years?
I mean, it's an interesting conversation with the bank because, you try and talk about customer lifetime value and, how these customers are actually coming back and buying another one. And here's how we can evidence our growth path, all the things. The banks aren't interested if you don't have cash in the bank. And it's definitely a learning curve, which is why we brought Nick Bastian on board, who's our Australian country lead. He's Kate's brother-in-law, but he's also a chartered accountant. So we kind of have all of these superpowers in our co-founding and shareholding team, whether it's creative, whether it's Felicity Morgan-Rind, who's our chef and recipe developer. She was trained by Peter Gordon for 7 years. Like, we've got all of these superpowers that when you bring them all together, it kind of works. Finance is the one that none of us like apart from Nick. So he does those.
And as a company with sustainability, a true sustainability in that idea of, buy once and buy well, not kind of keep buying something not kind of just consume your way out of a consumer problem. I mean, it's your dream to also see everyone go into their cupboards and pull down the cast iron pan that was passed down from Auntie Wendy and actually just kind of pull other things back out of the cupboards and get them using as well.
Most definitely, yeah. The number of customers I get in touch with is saying, I've got this cast iron skillet, how do I restore it? Or how do I make it less rusty or whatever? I'm not there to sell them on one of our pans. I'm there to educate them on how to use the pan that they've inherited from Auntie Helga or whoever it is, and to get using it again and be comfortable using it in the kitchen. Our mission is to take as many Teflon pans out of landfill every year as we can. If we do that through educating people how to use their current cast iron skillets, great. If we do it through selling ours, then great. But the idea is we'll throw away 0 Teflon pans into landfill every year. And that's our motivator.
What would your advice be for someone who is thinking, like your background of working to help other people sell a lot of products in advertising, marketing and branding, and having that itch to go, boy, it'd be cool to make our own brand, our own product, do it with our own values. What would your advice be to someone who has that itch?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it. Which is a really old advertising thing that I learned, but it is hard. It is tough. So it's not for the faint-hearted. But my advice would be just start, which is the hardest thing to do, but just start. There will never be a perfect time, a perfect place, a perfect team to launch with or to start thinking about it. But, thoughts are great. I think we just need more action and more focus and more action. So whatever it is you're looking to create, you'll never know if you don't just start. And it sounds really simple, but, I have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of ideas that I want to start. And my advice to myself and to anyone looking to get into business would be just get on and do it, just start.
I'll bet a lot of people, when you might have floated the idea of as a team, when you might have floated the idea of a 100-year guarantee, would have said, not possible, don't do it, that's dumb, etc. But how important do you reckon having that kind of a catch call that immediately kind of sets what your values and your differences in people's mind, has been to you, and how important is it not to listen to advice that says no to things that you've got a gut instinct on?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between kind of persistence and resilience and then blind ignorance. So we'll, partner with experts, and if the experts tell us that we can't do something, we might get a second opinion, but we probably won't do it. If we're confident that it can be done, like a 3-generation guarantee, it is a differentiator for our brand, for our product, and, it holds us all accountable as well. We have production assistants who come in and help us pack the pans in our warehouse in Auckland. But I'm often at least once or twice a week packing the products. So I know exactly what's going out and, exactly what it means to the customer on the other end who's going to be using this thing for generations to come. And, I don't get that feeling when I'm going and looking at, plastic packaging with water in it. When I go and see beer companies, or I go to, different centres around New Zealand of where things are made, every single pan that goes out will have a different story to tell, essentially. It will have different food cooked in it, different cultures using it. And even 3 years in, that still puts my hairs up. It's quite cool.
It's so cool. And as a final thought, what will success be for you and for the company?
I have no idea what success looks like for me. Probably just stay healthy. Stay healthy so that I can have future generations to hand mine on to. That's the dream and version of success for me personally. Business-wise, I think that ambition of taking Teflon pans out of landfill every year in whatever way we can, the ambition now is to find something useful to turn them back into. The big challenge that we have at the moment is, sure, we can take them out of the system, but what do we do with them then? And so success for us is building that circular economy around Teflon, taking it out of the system with cast iron as the solution, and being able to do something more meaningful with the Teflon, whether it's from cookware, whether it's from medical grade products, whatever it is. Once we've taken it out of the system, what do we do with it then? And that would be my call to action or request from the listeners. If you're an engineer or a material scientist or working in that kind of research space, help us out, give us a call. I'd love to know what we can do with Teflon once we've taken it out of the system.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. And wouldn't it be great if every company that had been responsible for putting all this shit into the world had to take responsibility for pulling it back in?
100%.
like you do with the cast iron. Well, thank you for coming and sharing your story. It's cool. It's such a cool thing to see. And can't wait to see where you take it next. That's Joe Carter, the CEO and co-founder at Ironclad Pan Co. Tēnā koe.
Awesome. Cheers, Simon.
So thanks to Joe Carter, to you for listening, and for everyone who helps make this happen, like our producer, Te Aihe Butler. Do follow Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to rate and leave a review if you like what we do. And keep an eye out for Going Global in your Business is Boring feed, our new podcast with NZTE. E noho rā.
From the Spin-Off Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz. Kia ora e te iwi, Te Aihe Butler here, podcast manager at The Spin-Off. If you enjoy listening to our podcasts, consider supporting our mahi by signing up to become a Spin-Off member at thespinoff.co.nz/donate. The Spin-Off Podcast Network.